Sorry. Good morning, everyone. We'll start the meeting now. It's 10 o'clock. So can I have apologies, please?
Apologies from Councillor Spencer, and Councillor Peters will be joining us about 11 o'clock, Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor Greatrix.
Councillor Greatrix, thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
Declarations of interest, anyone? No, there doesn't seem to be any declarations. The minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of September, which I don't think we've received, have we?
They've not been finalised, Chair, so those will have to move to the next meeting for approval.
Yes, well, I'm sure that'll be fine with everyone. I get your acceptance on that.
Item 4, Chair.
Item 4, Customer Feedback and Complaints Service, the Annual Report 2020, page 1 to 20.
That's led by the Leader of the Council, Chair.
Would you like to lead that, Mr. White?
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman. Delighted to see you up in the chair. First time in 23 years I think you've occupied that chair, and I hope you're feeling incredibly comfortable.
First time I've sat at this table in 23 years, so it's quite an honour, isn't it? I hope I don't disgrace the table.
Well, thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to come and present the annual complaints report, Customer Feedback and Complaints Service. I've assumed, Madam Chairman, that the members of the committee have had the opportunity to read through the report. I think you'll find the information contained in it is relatively easy to digest. It's in a nicely presented format. I think it's also worth drawing your attention to the fact that it is relatively narrow in its remit, in what it deals with, and how we've dealt with it, particularly around the purpose of the corporate complaints being to do with stage 1. Stage 2 complaints are managed by the LGO, and this doesn't include LGO and social care ombudsman. Adult social care and children's social care reports are also not included. Dealing with complaints is something that we endeavour to learn from. Oftentimes people are complaining to the local authority because something's not worked, and when they raise a complaint, actually what they're doing is raising an issue which highlights the fact that we could do stuff better. So we've always been able to take a positive view of complaints, certainly in my time as a county councillor. And what we do when we receive those complaints is investigate them thoroughly and go into the details of what went wrong. Of course, one of the issues dealing with complaints is that sometimes somebody complains to multiple people simultaneously. I have, I'm afraid to say, in the past year or so, lost count of the number of times where I get a complaint which says, "Dear Councillor White, Mr. Henderson, Mr. Pert, Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so," and take your pick of all the people that they've actually written to simultaneously. That is a function of people complaining by email. There's nothing we can do about that, but it does make the management of those complaints a little challenging, and we find that people are trying to respond to those as best they can from multiple sources. The person who ultimately deals with all the complaints in the local authority is Kate Bullivant, who is the supporting act this morning, Madam Chairman. And what I'd like to do is hand over to Kate just to talk you through some of the details of the complaints procedure. Kate is, without a shadow of a doubt, the expert on this, and we are really well supported by Kate. I rely on her very, very heavily for advice and guidance on dealing with complaints procedure, and throughout the year or so I've been doing this job, I found her to be utterly reliable in her ability to deal with the complaints in a timely and efficient manner. So, Madam Chairman, with your permission, if I could hand over to Kate Bullivant to just take you through some more details of the report.
Yes, good morning, Kate. I'd like to hand over to you, please.
Good morning, everyone. The local authority operates 3 complaints procedures, 2 statutory procedures which are in line with the Children Act for children's social care and the 2009 NHS social care regulations for adult social care. Those 2 reports have already gone through scrutiny. They go to the safeguarding and overview scrutiny. Today I'm bringing the corporate complaints procedure, which covers everything apart from the social care aspect. It also covers SEND as well, but the SEND numbers aren't reported in this report because it needs to go to scrutiny in respect of safeguarding and overview. Happy to share those reports if you would like them under separate within a separate email, etc. So the corporate complaints procedure is a procedure that we use to respond to a large number of issues within the council. As you'll see within the report, it's a two-stage procedure, and then off we go to the Ombudsman. The ultimate for the County Council is always the Ombudsman, whether it's social care, whether it's corporate, who are very strong in the way that they deal with councils. They look at all the issues that are raised and then come back to us with an outcome and recommendations. The corporate complaints procedure is based on do it once, do it right. So what we like to do is, when it comes in, if we can resolve it, we will. Obviously, there's a high number of issues that don't come into the complaints procedure. So, for example, reporting a pothole, it's a request for a service, so therefore we go down the report it route. Certain highways issues can't come into the complaints procedure because not all highways are for the council to look at too, so you've got the highways agency involved, etc. So suggestions for improvement to council services, we're always happy to receive those. Claims for damages, that goes down the claims route, so therefore we signpost as well. The inquiry comes in and then it's defined, is it really a complaint? And then if it is, it goes into the complaints procedure at stage 1 and responded to by the service. Once that response goes out, the complainant has the right to escalate to stage 2, but they've got to provide evidence of what's not been responded to. We don't push them through a process. It's about managing expectations as well to actually to get to the end of that and then off to the Ombudsman. We have to manage complainants' expectations. It's important that we do. We need to say what we can look at, what we can't look at, how we're going to resolve the issues that come to the fore. It's very important that we do that. We support a number of agencies as well. So, for example, whilst schools have their own complaints procedures, we do at times have to get involved in respect of issues that may come to the council. So it's not always about what the council supply and provide. Sometimes it's about what we maintain as well. Some schools are maintained schools, so therefore, whilst they should have their own processes, sometimes we have to get involved. Now, not everything that, as I've said previously, comes into the complaints procedure. So, for example, we have an MP inquiry process, where we deal with MP inquiries coming in, and as you can see, there's a high number this year coming in from our MPs. We have decided to push back slightly on MP inquiries. The reason for that is that a high number of highways issues, wanting to report flooding, wanting to report potholes, and therefore we are supporting our MP caseworkers to actually report that via our digital process, via Report It. As you can see by looking at page 19, lots of information that we do, lots of processes we do. We try to deal with things under duty. We try to deal with things via an inquiry process too. It's to ensure that we are seen to listen to our residents. If we can respond straight away, we do. If we can't, we go to the service area to support them to respond as well. It's a very easy to read report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Could I just pause momentarily on MP inquiry numbers? It won't have escaped anybody's attention in the room that MP inquiry numbers have, I think the phrase I would use is gone through the roof. I think it's just worth helping members to remember the timelines that we're dealing with. We had a general election in December 2019. We went into lockdown in March 2020. MPs stopped going to Parliament in March 2020 and didn't return until July 2021. So the MPs were in their constituencies, undertaking parliamentary meetings on Zoom or Teams, whichever it was. And so perhaps, how can I put it delicately? We're making quite a lot of work and being the recipients of complaints from constituents which would possibly have been better signposted directly to the local authority. So I would ask you not to draw too many conclusions from the number of MPs' inquiries if you bear in mind the timeline and the circumstances we found ourselves in during the course of the reporting period from 2020 to 2021. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Harkins.
Thank you. First of all, I think I'd have to question the comment the leader made about Kate being the supporting act. I think possibly that she is the act, not the supporting act. Anyway, to get to the point, the questions. Obviously, a disproportionate number of complaints have come from MPs. Do they reflect the disproportionate number of complaints about highways? I mean, I think from what the leaders just said, that they do. But my concern is that are people going to MPs, and normally there's quite a large number of MPs' complaints. I mean, I know this may be much higher than usual. Is it twice as much? Something like that. But there's always quite a large number of complaints from MPs. And the question I would ask is, why are people going to MPs? Is it because they want to avoid the digital complaints process? And if so, you know, that's certainly an issue with me when people come to me because they can't go online, or they don't want to go online, or they just feel it's too complicated. I mean, it's not complicated, but if you're not IT literate, then it can be an issue. If you haven't got a smartphone, and surprisingly, not everyone has smartphones, then it can be a problem. So the process I'm looking at really is why people are going to MPs, because normally it's fairly high. And if it's about, and if there's a disproportionate number of cases which are about highways maintenance, then obviously you're trying to deal with those complaints, but let's be honest, highways maintenance is a disaster area, and therefore you're going to continue to get those complaints. Now, how can you resolve those problems? I mean, I was dealing with one particular issue which I think took about 4 years to get resolved, and he would have complained, probably rightly, every month if he hadn't have come to me. So how do you deal with that, and how are you going to deal with that in the future? Because clearly, if people are going to the wrong person, like the MP, as opposed to coming straight to the local authority, how are we going to resolve that problem?
Thank you. The complaints procedure itself is accessible as well as being online. So we have dedicated phone lines for people who want to complain. The issues that we're finding that are coming through via the MP inquiries is when people have don't want to use Report It, and therefore we've been working with caseworkers for them to support the constituent to report it, or you can go into a library, or you can ring now and they will do it on your behalf. So that's one element, I won't say sorted, but part of the resolution. The second issue is Report It itself, because they don't always give a timely update in respect of where their concern is. You know, why has my blocked drain only been given a priority 3, etc., etc. And work is ongoing at the moment in respect of reviewing that process. James Bailey is working with a constituent from the Nosal area to look at the issues and her experiences of using that system. Because I think it's very important, because you're the one that is there paddling in the water, etc., etc. So therefore, you need to know what that process will give you, and we need to know what that process isn't giving you. So it's in the process of being reviewed.
Thank you.
Just if I may add to that, Madam Chairman.
Yeah.
Your characterisation of highways maintenance being a disaster area is not accurate. Okay. There are improvements that we need to make with our highways maintenance contract, and we're in the process of looking at that. When we compare ourselves to other authorities in our peer group amongst our the local government family, our highways maintenance contract is not off the scale in terms of its standards at all, either one way or the other. But what I am keen to do, and what the portfolio holder for highways is doing, is looking at how we spend our money and making sure that it's spent efficiently. We do want to be able to, for people to be able to communicate with highways department. We do acknowledge the fact that the digital system doesn't work for everybody, and potentially the reason why people are getting in touch with their MPs is for the reason you set out. But I wouldn't characterise highways maintenance as a disaster area. It's an area which we need to improve on. We acknowledge that fact, and we are endeavouring to improve it now. Thank you.
Anyone else want to ask a question? Yes.
Hello, so I do apologise for being late as well,
No
I'm
worries.
sorry. Can I just say, you say about the MP inquiries. Well, I work on the district as well, so I've noticed a higher inquiry, more so because people are so contained through COVID, they've had nothing else to do apart from go around their areas. And so many people have realised what a beautiful area we live in, but they're still seeing the faults. So more people are going to district, the MP and county. I've had so many complaints this year just due to lockdown because people are seeing. So I do sympathise with yourselves and the MP and highways. I do sympathise because people are seeing these problems a whole lot more. There is one thing I would say though, is I do think communication between the people that are complaining, yourselves and the county councillor, is lacking a little bit, because I'm not aware of a complaint until a resident contacts me and says, why hasn't this complaint been dealt with? And I'm like, well, I don't really know about that complaint and it's in my area. That is the only concern I would have. But with the MP inquiries, is they have no one else to they sit there and they go, Amanda Milling, we'll go to her purely because she's our MP and she'll get it done. And we've seen so much of it in COVID, district, trees, everything. It's not just highways, it's everything. So, sorry.
I think I concur with you that, because my mailbag has been really, really busy since lockdown. I think people have perhaps been at home more and, you know, sort of when they've led a busy life, some things go over the top, don't they? But, you know, when there's more time, everything's examined more. Could I just ask a question, please? If the same complaint, you know, if these people sent to the borough or the town council, the county council and the MP, does this same complaint get called one complaint in your dossier, or does it go down as 3 complaints and boost the number up?
No, we try not to boost numbers. No, it would go as 1 complaint. If it's an MP inquiry, as well as a complaint, it would be 2 separate ones, because the MP process we see as an inquiry, not a complaint.
I see. Yeah, yes, that helps, because it can soon expand the numbers, can't it? Yes. So, yes, Councillor Pert, did you want to ask a question?
Thank you, Chair. I think you mentioned, sorry, through you, Chair, I think was mentioned in the report that sometimes you have compliments that come into the council. So let me just start on that vein. I have to say, Kate, every time I've dealt with you, you've been nothing but efficient, effective, and can see to the right to the nub of a problem and how to resolve that professionally for the benefit of our residents. So from a personal perspective, thank you for everything that you're doing, because my granular experience on the ground is that you are fantastic. So thank you. I did want to come on and pick up a couple of points there, if I could, please. The first one relates to the outcome of a complaint. And what I'm thinking about is, do you have a recommendation at the end of the process which then allows you to recommend that a department head or someone of seniority re-looks at the overall process? Because the reason I'm saying that is we can deal with each one individually, but at a certain stage, if you take a helicopter approach and look down, actually you've got, you know, maybe something structurally wrong somewhere in a process somewhere, that actually if you have that as an outcome and a recommendation, that it goes with the complaint, and then there is some further follow-up, not necessarily to the resident, but to resolve that structurally. That seems to me to be sort of, the end bit of the process. So the first question is, do you have that authority and ability? And then does that get followed up by, maybe the leader or the cabinet to make sure that it has not just sort of been kicked into the long grass, but is actively picked up? So that's my first question. Second question is, do you look at any of these complaints geographically? Because sometimes there is that sort of geographical sort of, explosion of something, either because an area isn't being sort of getting the attention it might deserve, or alternatively, sometimes there are some people who are very burdensome in demanding of time, attention and services. And the third one is, having dealt with some situations that ended up in complaints, formal complaints, that went on for 2 or 3 years with many officers involved across various different conversations. And in my view, I think the council on a couple of these over-supported the resident. So do we have a comprehensive customer management system that documents over time some of those conversations? Because the reason I think we got ourselves into a mess was that the conversations were complex and went on for so long across so many different people. And actually, if we'd been a bit more like the police and documented some of the stuff that had gone before, we might have been able to say, look, here's all the evidence. We've done our statutory duty. We've actually done the bit we should have done for you as a resident. It's not our issue. And I think we've been dragged into stuff, in my view, unfairly, maybe because we haven't had that. So I'm just interested to know whether we do, and it just hasn't been followed, or not. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Would you like to respond?
Thank you. Recommendations are very important for us because it's part of the lessons learned. And we're very lucky to have John Tradewell as monitoring officer, and also John Henderson in respect of a chief exec, who are very interested and act upon complaint responses. Sorry, I didn't mention Councillor White. So therefore, as a team, we are very well supported, and I'm very grateful for that support. I have colleagues throughout nationally whose senior management don't have an interest in complaints. If we look at the processes together, the processes, the statutory processes and the corporate processes are very different. Part of the children's regs, for example, there will be an independent investigation, and there is always recommendations coming from that investigation which are followed through. And the same in respect of adult social care. In respect of corporate, there are recommendations, A, because I pick them up when we see complaints coming in. If there's more than one complaint coming in, we see a trend, and therefore we act upon that. And so if we take Report It, as I was just talking about, the issues coming in about Report It highlighted an issue that I took to John Tradewell and said to John, who then brought Darryl into the mix, there is an issue here, we're seeing X, Y, Z, and therefore we raise that as an issue. Hence, the review of that process. So we do try to be very on the ball when we see trends and themes coming in. The same with recommendations. The second question was about geographical reporting. Each service area, both statutory and quarterly, have quarterly reports or monthly reports. It's whatever they need to actually have an overview of what's happening in each service area or each geographical area. So, for example, in children's social care, the geographics in that is very important because they need to know what's going on, how that's working, etc., etc. We don't have it as much in corporate. They do have that reporting, but they don't ask for it in a geographical way. But of course, we can do that if they so need. And the third question for me was very much about the unreasonably persistent ways of some of our complainants. And usually when we do have someone that's unreasonably persistent, I am their point of contact. Councillor White and I have been dealing with someone recently where it's important just to have one point of contact, so that wherever this person goes, I respond, and therefore we keep everything in one place. We close this person down for this person to come up elsewhere, but you know, you have to ensure that A, you are responding to the issues that are raised, but B, just according what the situation this person is in and whether or not other services are involved, you know, could be children's social care, could be safeguarding, that you keep that person, I won't say with you, but you ensure that you respond to those issues coming in, because it's very important. There's a lot going on in that family that we are there, or we need to be there to support. Things like leaves on the road or trees, that's a bit of a different case, but we do still hold on to them, or support the service area to hold on to them, because we need to know what's going on out there, but we very quickly close people down. It's important that we do, because we've only got finite amount of resource where we have to move on to the next thing, because we can't do any more. Thank you.
I could just add, Madam Chairman, a couple of things. To your question about geographical disposition of complaints, it is the case that sometimes that's contingent upon the enthusiasms of the MP and their caseworker. So we sometimes have a batch of complaints in an area to do with highways. We may have a batch of complaints in an area to do with adult social services, and that is a function of the interests of the MP and the caseworker. So sometimes it's not straightforward to draw geographical conclusions. I think anybody who's been a councillor or a member of Parliament for any length of time knows that within your divisions or your constituencies, you are always going to end up with one or two people for whom nothing is the right answer, short of them having stuff served off on a plate, and even then the pattern on the plate is likely to be wrong. Everybody in this room will have experienced that to a greater or lesser extent over the years, and there's somebody who's in frequent contact with me at the chairman's, in the chairman's division who is of that ilk. Everybody's got one, and we get to deal with them in an even-handed way over many years.
I think you have to feel sorry for them, that they've nothing else in their lives, don't you? But that's another story. Has anyone else got a question? Yes.
Sorry, just a quick question. Do you know when you have a complaint come in, do you liaison with the borough and the district? Because I've had an incident just recently, and I'm taking quite a bit of abuse from a resident, because the district and the county don't have their facts the same. So it would, you know, I thought if district spoke to county and vice versa, then they would be able to be on the same level. However, yeah, that's fine.
Well, perhaps we could have a conversation outside so we can see what the issue is and how we can...
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I just wanted to see whether or not you did work with the district or borough on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Wildman.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I would also like to echo Mr Pert's comments about UK, because I've been on this authority for about 8 years. Your service to this authority is incredible. The amount of complaints that we've had correspondence over those years, they always get dealt with, and they get dealt with in a professional manner. So I want to thank you for that. I have a couple of questions around report it. So I note that it says refer to report it as 158 inquiries or whatever else. What does that mean? Because the report it system is highways, it's like a whole list of different things. I would be pretty surprised if it was 158 of those. That's mine alone. How does that work, and why is it 158, and what's the scope of it?
In respect of complaints, if people come in and ask and say they've got an issue, you know, tree needs overgrown, etc., we look at it and think it would be quicker to report it. So hence, that's us going back. to say that it's important. We're a digital council and it's important to use those services. I mean, we've had conversations about other digital services within the council, haven't we? And we've worked together to get to an outcome to those. If someone then comes back to me and says, I can't, I'm not able to do it, we do it for them. But it's important that the council's ways of working are used, because that's the decision that's been made. So hence that's why we do it.
Can I come back on that? That explains it perfectly well. I thought it was just that the reported kind of inquiries rather than refer to report it, if you get what I mean. So that completely clears up. I just got one further question around councillor inquiries. It's probably quite hard to report, but we clearly report here MP inquiries, but we get a substantial amount of inquiries from the public, which are potentially quite helpful if the main aim of this report is to look at it and learn from the complaints. I don't think there's potentially an exercise of trying to understand the complaints that come through to councillors themselves. I'm not quite sure how that will work practically, but is there something perhaps that we could start to do to look at those inquiries so that we could capture all of them, rather than just look at those that come direct to the authority and direct to the MPs?
I think that's a good point. Yes, I think we do need to have a service where we've got all that information, as Councillor Pert was talking about. It's important to know the whole story, isn't it? So yes, that's a good point.
I probably receive, 3 or 4 inquiries a day, and that is through social media mostly. And they're not just comments, but they're into my private message inbox, but they're all effectively complaints as such. They're all queries that we need to deal with, but no one ever sees that. That's just me dealing with them, and then if there's something really difficult, I'll come to UK or I'll come to a cabinet member.
Leader.
To Councillor Wildman's points about the complaints that he gets as a councillor, I think one of the opportunities that you get as a councillor is understanding what's going on in your patch, and then being part of the administration and helping us shape policy to respond to that. So whilst I can understand why, from a sort of empirical sense, it would be good to see these enumerated in this report, the information that councillors get. At the same time, I think there's also a strong case to say, well, actually, this is the stuff that comes in from elsewhere, and we as councillors are involved in shaping policy to respond to the way people are seeing their lives being affected by council policy on the ground. So I think there is a balance there to be struck, and we find that balance, hopefully, and if we're not doing it, then we need to have further conversations in the future.
I think we could pick that up as a recommendation for future work. To delve a bit deeper into what you're saying and
perhaps
some recommendation.
I'm not sure what the recommendation is, and that's because I think it'd be quite hard to capture that information. I take the leader's point very clearly, because I suppose we all have the right then to represent our residents when they complain to us, and we then can put that into practice by coming to committee and making recommendations and so on. So I understand that. I think it's more a point of, if we don't have the full picture from this report, and we're looking at complaints as a whole, how do we then react as an authority if we don't have the full picture? Because every council's got their own different strategy of recording responses, I suppose.
So you're happy if we take this further and look into it in a bit more depth? Are you happy with that, Leader?
It is potentially a recommendation that's fraught with difficulty, because there are occasions when we need to change policy. And whenever we have to change policy, it results in a sort of bow wave of complaints. Sometimes the decision to change policy is not in our gift. It is because of the changes in government legislation, or, for example, something goes to court, a judge makes a determination, and the consequence of the implementation of that determination results in policy changes here, which results in complaints, and that's completely outside our control, and there's nothing we could do about it. There are some times when we have to change policy which is done on the basis of what we have to do for the greater good. And that might be because we have to reallocate funding from one place to another, which means that some people had been getting a service before and they're now not getting a service, and that will trigger complaints as well. So I take Councillor Wyman's points, and they're well made, but it would need to be very carefully thought through so that the data that came through the complaints system accurately reflected genuine complaints as a consequence of poor service, rather than complaints arising as a result of policy changes, some of which are outside our control.
Yeah, take that on board. Yeah. But, yeah, Councillor Bird. Sorry.
Thanks for allowing me back in, Chair. Just building on my previous points, and thank you for those answers. I remember maybe 3 or 4 years ago, this council had a peer review. I also remember the district council locally to here had a peer review maybe 18 months before that. Obviously one of the things from a peer review is you tend to try and pull out the strong points and those areas that need work. And just sort of taking that point, I wonder whether you've done any benchmarking of our complaints versus other authorities, and whether there was anything to be learned from that. Maybe nothing. I just wondered whether there was anything in terms of either process or in terms of volumes, and whether there was anything that helped us through a wider review of similar authorities.
Thank you. The Ombudsman obviously does benchmarking. If you look at their interactive map, it shows comparisons with the same size authority. I'm part of National Complaints Manager Group and Regional Complaints Manager Group, and as you would imagine, it's a good group to be on. We do benchmarking, but we don't do it till the end of the year. The reason being is that we aren't supposed to release our figures until they've been through due process. So yes, we do, and I'm very happy to share that should anyone be interested in those figures.
Given the response through you, Chair, maybe I don't need the detail, but maybe how we've been performing over the last few years, just as a summary statement, would give us that without doing all the detail.
Thank you. We perform very well in comparison to other authorities. The main reason being is that our senior leads and our WLT members are very interested in complaints and will work with us. I have to work hard to ensure we have those appropriate relationships to show that A, we learn from complaints, B, a complaint is not something to be worried about, it's about ensuring that the service is fit for purpose, and also C, we are open to challenge, we don't get it right all the time, we are human, so therefore we need to understand that too. And I must say, without the support of SLT, WLT members, our complaints wouldn't be as timely, our responses wouldn't be as timely as we have now. Like I say, we have to build those working relationships, which are very important.
Thank you for that very full and comprehensive answer, which gives great clarity and comfort.
Is there anyone else who wants to ask? I'm sure that everybody's given you a very, very strong interrogation, and I thank you for the work that you do and the answers that you've given them. I'm just thinking ahead, and I'm wondering whether, as a committee, we ought to be looking for pressure points that are in the report, any pressure points, and where this overview and scrutiny committees, where we can play any part to help you and get involved with anything that you want us to get involved with. Like, are there any specific things that we could do to help in the future?
Madam Chairman, you've known over many years my approach to scrutiny and indeed complaints process, which is that we get better through really good scrutiny and having the complaint system that works. I think the role that all councillors can play is making sure that the complaint system works effectively for those people who are endeavouring to complain. Those authorities who get fewer complaints may well be getting fewer complaints because those authorities make it really hard for people to complain. Councillor Atkins has raised a point earlier which hints at that, which says actually for some people the ability to complain is difficult because it's only digitally accessible, and that might result in an increase in MP complaints or complaints, as Councillor Wildman pointed out, to councillors. So we need to be open to complaints. We have a culture within the organisation which learns from it, but if you can help us over the forthcoming year to make sure that we are as open as we believe we are, then that will be a useful thing for us to be able to put a tick in that particular box to allow us to highlight the fact we're an organisation that learns from our mistakes.
Yeah, I think that's quite good. It's something that we can keep an eye on as this committee, and if we need to bring it on as an agenda item any time, you know where we are. You can always liaise with us and ourselves with you. So again, thank you very much for the hard work you do. Thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't recognise you when you came in. Item number 5. Item number 5, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I'm going to ask Nick to introduce the Overview and Scrutiny Committee Work Programme 21-22. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So it is one of the roles of this committee to take the overarching approach to the work programmes. So you are charged with looking at what the 4 Overview and Scrutiny Committees are undertaking to avoid duplication, to make sure the right tasks are being dealt with in the right areas. And so it's appropriate now, having set up the committees back in May and June, that this is the first time that you've had the chance to look at the 4 committee work programmes, including your own, and actually have a discussion about the items that are on those work programmes and the appropriateness and the prioritisation that's taken place amongst the 4 committees. We have a slight difficulty today because the chair of safeguarding is unavailable, and there is no member from safeguarding here. But what I would ask is that if each of the appropriate chairs, so Councillor Clements, Councillor Pert, Councillor Heath, could actually just present their work programmes and explain what's on there and the reasons why. The first item is corporate, which is your own, and I know it's later on your agenda because there are some additional items that have now come to light in the last couple of days, but I'll hand over to you, Chair, just to present the corporate review.
Thank you. The Corporate and Scrutiny Committee is the Council's principal overview and scrutiny committee. We're responsible for the coordinating and approving the scrutiny work programme and doing all the work that Nick's just explained. So in our work programme, we've got, just a minute, let me just, I wasn't expecting this, I'm sorry.
Your next meeting, Chair, is 16th of November.
The 16th of November for the next meeting. And what else do I need to tell you? Do I need to tell you what we're doing on the 16th?
No, it's right, Chair.
Everyone's got it in front of them.
With the Chair's approval, and I will discuss your work programme later on the agenda. So at the moment, your substantive items for the 16th of November are the Integrated Performance Report for Quarter 2, the digital strategy that you asked for when you were doing your original work programme planning at the start of the municipal year, and then the impact of COVID-19 on Staffordshire County Council's communities, economy and organisation, and the recovery progress update for October 2021. When we come to discuss your work programme as a separate item, then there are some additional items, Chair, that have now come to light.
That would come to light. Well, I think each meeting we have would probably introduce new items as well, like we have done today, won't we?
Yes,
that's
thank you, Chair.
Aim of the game, isn't it? So
it's over to Councillor Pert, Chair.
Yes, over to Councillor Pert.
Thank you, Chair. So from a health and care overview and scrutiny committee on the forward agenda, before I go on to that, I'd just like to make a couple of comments, if I may, please, Chair. First of all, it is recognised that due to the COVID pandemic, which has affected this, not just this country, but globally, over the last 18 months, that actually the focus has been principally about health-related and the health response to COVID, which includes the vaccination programme. As a result, there probably has been insufficient scrutiny of social care, and there is a greater focus on making sure that is being picked up in the forward agenda. The second point I'd like to make is that the committee is a joint committee with districts and boroughs, whereby there is a member on the, from the County Council on the district and borough, and equally one from the district and borough on the committee. And what we are trying to do with that is to ensure there is greater scrutiny at a local level of the relevant local issues relating to health and care, but only local issues by the districts and boroughs, and that equally there is a wider conversation across councillors, because I think it's an important area in terms of us in our community leadership roles. So in terms of the forward agenda, we've deliberately put in an additional meeting which looks at GP access, because whilst we have discussed GP access back in July, I think the scrutiny of that specific issue wasn't sufficiently robust in itself. And second of all, there was an action plan that came from that, which we need to satisfy ourselves has actually being either implemented or is significantly along the way to being implemented, because that is the way for 80% of our residents to access health services. So it is an important area. Equally, however, we are aware of significant pressures within the health service at the moment, particularly in terms of delayed transfer from ambulances into hospitals. We're also aware of delayed discharge, and we need to satisfy ourselves that whilst we are at a pressure point which is equivalent to where we would normally see in peak winter times, that there is sufficient capacity to be able to deal with what comes forward. Equally, the committee is a relatively new committee, so we have scheduled a mental health workshop, which is not a public session, but is really to help provide an overview of those mental health services available to our community, right the way from acute services right the way down to mild community-based services. And that will include things like loneliness and isolation in itself. There is equally, there has over the COVID-19 period been a delay from the health service in terms of a whole range of consultations on service changes that they are looking to make. You know, whether that is in the George Bryant Centre or whether that is within maternity services. And there is more to come, and as a result there is a picking up in the forward agenda of the structural related issues that the health service wants to bring forward, and that is also within our scrutiny going forwards. And the final element that I would just like to touch on is that the care market for social care is really important, and we need to satisfy ourselves that we understand the long-term trends within the care market post-pandemic, because I think has changed some of the demands and requirements on social care, and with people potentially wanting to be at home longer, and we need to make sure there is sufficient, if that is the case, we need to make sure there is sufficient home care capacity within the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prosperous.
Councillor Clements.
Councillor Clements, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Our next meeting is the 29th of November, and to note this is a change of date from the 11th due to the fact that I've been called up for jury service in Birmingham Crown Court. So we have the Highways Partner Contract Performance and Transformation, so basically Amy, coming to us on the 29th of November, as well as the flood risk management strategy, which will be the whole of Staffordshire strategy, not just very local as some people would like it. At the end of this month, we've also got a planning meeting for the national bus strategy. In January, we're going to have a bus inquiry day, which has been bought from Councillor Parry being chairman last year, and we're going to have a full day, or at least a morning and a bit of the afternoon, to discuss the national bus strategy going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. The last one is a safeguarding overview. Sadly, the chairman has been taken ill, but I'm told that he's getting on very well. He's recovering, and I'm sure we'll send our best wishes to him for his continued improvement to his health. So you've got it in front of you. I don't know whether you want to ask Nick any questions about it, but the details are there for the November work.
The only comment I would now make, Chair, is having looked at the 4 of your Scrutiny Committee's work programmes and having presentations from 3 of the committees, just whether any members have got any comments on what's included or not included.
Councillor Atkins.
I was just going to comment on the fact that, there are areas like social care and climate change where I would have thought it would have been helpful to have cross-cutting scrutiny sessions on that, because I see that climate change was taken off prosperous and put on to corporate. And it seems to me that, these sorts of urgent issues should embrace as many members as possible, rather than being the preserve of one particular committee. And I'm assuming that the members' workshop on mental health under the Health Committee will be open to all members, because I think that mental health is an issue which certainly impacts on all councillors, and they obviously have concerns about their particular constituents and the impact that COVID in particular has had on both younger and older members of their community.
Can I ask Nick to respond to you, please? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you put your hand up, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I think they're both really good points. In fairness, taking the second point first, I think the awareness of mental health services is critical for any councillor at any level. And we can't invite every councillor across Staffordshire, obviously, but the intention is to video, I think we're doing it on Teams, but the intention is to at least video the session, so that, or alternatively, we won't live broadcast it, but we will have, an ability for people to watch back the session, because it's just as possible that we could have new committee members in 12 months' time who don't have that experience on mental health, who would benefit from that. So I'm keen on keeping a library of resources that help upskill, any member in this important area, because post-COVID it certainly is a big and increasing area, and we do need to maintain parity of care. So that's the first point. Second point, in terms of climate change, I somewhat agree with the point. I would make the point that health retains climate change on its committee, if only to make sure that our partners have got an appropriate climate change strategy. And I think sometimes the difficulty for Prosperous is it's such a wide-ranging area that you could spend lots of time and not pick up all the key relevant areas, which is why we as a health committee decided to continue to scrutinise the climate change plans of our partners, because otherwise it could easily be missed. And as the third largest employer in the country, I think it was really important that we did do so.
Can I just clarify? So the members' workshop on mental health is being held face-to-face and recorded, or is it all online?
I can't give you the... I'll need to come back to you.
I'm sure we'll get back to you very soon. Can I just bring Nick in, please?
I think Councillor Atkins makes a very valid point. So I've already had representations from members of Councillor Clemence's committee. The reason why climate change was brought into the corporate agenda is because it is a corporate issue. And I think Councillor Clemence and certainly Councillor Greatrex agreed on that. That does not exclude other members from taking part. So we're undergoing discussions now about the fact that Councillor Warman is going to chair that meeting and going to lead that meeting, but with the chair's agreement, we can invite other councillors to take part. The idea, and when we get to the work programme discussion about your own work programme, and I know that Councillor Warman is going to speak about his ideas about climate change, it doesn't just sit with one committee, and the reason why it was chosen to be corporate was every single service, and as Councillor Pert said, and our external partners have a role to play in this. So Picking up Councillor Atkins's comment, yes, it is up to the chair of each individual working group or committee, but there is nothing to stop individual members being invited. My comment regarding Councillor Pert on the mental health would be having the recording is great, but it doesn't mean you can take part in the debate or ask questions. So maybe I can work with Councillor Pert and also Deb Breeden, who's his support officer, about how we gain more involvement in that debate. Does that sound fair, members? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anyone else? Yeah. Councillor Wildman.
Thank you very much. Two questions. One on the health and the climate change piece. It's definitely something that we should look into, 100%. Is it best? Because I'm looking at your work programme, and it is substantial. Probably the most substantial work programme out of all of the committees in terms of time and the seriousness of the issues that need to be dealt with. Would it be better if the climate change working group with health members on it, if they wish to take part in it, and we then looked at the health partners through that? Or is it better to do it through health because there's a statutory role for them, and maybe the health partners would come to that committee over the working group? Does that make sense? I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's a debate to be had there. I wonder what Jeremy has to say. I suppose 2 points are, is it better for the climate change piece, for the health partners, to be on the working group because it makes sense to see things through one group?
That seems to make sense.
Or is it better to see it through the statutory function of the health committee? Yeah, because you may get more engagement from health partners on that committee. There is a couple of issues.
Councillor Worthington indicated first. Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Pert.
Thank you for that. There is a statutory requirement now for every CCG to publish a climate change plan, and I'm sure that will form the basis of the scrutiny that is undertaken by health. I think it's exactly right that that scrutiny should then feed into the wider corporate scrutiny that is undertaken. And I think if it is successful, it is a good demonstration of how we as communities should take climate change. I am somewhat frustrated by one or two groups who think it is one individual's or one corporate body's responsibility to deliver climate change redress. Instead, it is all of our responsibilities, and it is important that the statutory body of health actually do ensure that some of our partners, all of our partners, take that seriously, which I think is the point that Mr. Wildman makes.
It's good to hear those comments. Are you happy with that? You seem as if
I'm nodding away. I think that's right. I think we can potentially hold them to account better in the health committee.
Okay, I'm just going to.
And we can obviously, well, any member of the working group or chairs or whatever can
come and join
look at that
the more the merrier.
And listen.
We've got to get to the.
Just have one more point on transformation of highways. That I know that's mentioned in Prosperous. Obviously, we've had conversations about AMI governance. That's quite similar to transformation. What do we want to do on that? Again, I'm posing questions rather than solutions, I'm sorry, but it's just one that I think we need to air and then discuss.
So that is the whole point about why we do this. This is this committee's role. So a couple of things. Firstly, I will support yours and Councillor Pert's comments. If the health committee could feed into your working group what they find out about climate change with their external partners, that is absolutely great. And I think that's the right way about it. Amy and Trust, our external arm's length partnerships are on your agenda for the governance arrangements. So that's very much to look at, and this was at the bequest of the Leader of the Council, is exactly who sits where, what responsibility they have. So we've got county councillors that sit on Nexus, we've got county councillors that sit on Entrust, and what their role is. And as far as corporate's concerned, your scrutiny, your investigation, your overview is about their role and their responsibilities and what they do. The service delivery of, for example, Amy, sits fairly and squarely with Prosperous. So actually what we are getting for the amount of money that we spend and the quality of service would sit with Councillor Clemence's committee. And that would also apply to Entrust and Councillor Clements is nodding ahead. Does that make that clear, Councillor Wyman? Does that, it's a separation of those two pieces of scrutiny.
It's a fine line I think is very difficult to take, and I think that we will end up overlapping. What I suggest is, in that transformation meeting, because we were going to set up a meeting with the same individuals who are reporting to that committee to look at governance, wouldn't it, if it's on the 29th of November, we use that opportunity for whoever it is on the corporate committee to sit in there. We can listen to exactly what they have to say. We don't have to say anything at that point.
Yeah,
but we could then, if there's anything that needs to come from that from a corporate perspective, then that can be taken forward after that meeting. And then there's no change in that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm, for one, I'm very, very interested in the work that you're going to be doing on Amy. And I'm hoping that we can be invited to come along to your meeting that day and maybe take part. There's lots of questions that I'm sure every councillor wants to ask Amy. I certainly do.
Absolutely no problem at all. I think Councillor Warman is correct. We need to ensure that we're not... There is always going to be an overlap on certain subjects, but for members of corporate to come to that meeting on the 29th is only going to be a good thing, so you know what we've done, where we are with it, and then you can go away and do what you guys need to do.
I think there are a lot of questions.
Yeah, I think there's probably going to be more in my area this than there is actually solving, isn't it?
I think it's the one subject that's imperative to every councillor. It's all our mailbags.
Can I, Chair, just ask for the committee's approval to make that a recommendation then?
Yes.
That prosperous invites corporate review to their meeting.
Yes. Do we take a vote on that?
No,
just a recommendation.
Yeah.
Then. You're happy with that?
Yeah, that recommendation, I'm happy to propose that, and I'll look for a seconder.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pert.
Thank you. Can I just come back on the earlier question in terms of the Mental Health Day? We've not yet scheduled whether it's virtual or face-to-face. I'm happy to take a recommendation from this committee, and equally, either way, we can invite other councillors. But it's meant to be an upskilling and an awareness day rather than anything else. But happy to take a recommendation from here.
Do we ask for a recommendation?
No, I think Chair, Councillor Pert's just hit the nail on the head. It is an upskilling, it is an information day, and I think maybe this committee might want to consider what outcomes come out of that day, whereby further scrutiny work's undertaken, and following Councillor Atkins's comment, who should be involved and be involved in that debate. And Councillor Pert is nodding, so I take that as a positive.
Thank you, Nick. Any more questions or comments? No, I think we've given it quite a good airing, haven't we? So, my own work programme. Page, it's okay, I'm just shocking, aren't I? I'll have it in a minute, wait a minute. Just get, there we go. So we're doing the November.
And I need to announce major changes to that, Chair.
Right, so, well, we cancelled the call-in on the 8th, haven't we?
Yes.
Yes, that's cancelled for Friday. So the 16th of November, the Integrated Performance Report, Q2, and we have the leader and Ian Parry coming with Mr Tradewell and Rob Salmon. The digital strategy, and with the same member, with Ian and John Tradewell again, and the impact of COVID-19 on SCC communities, economy and organisation and recovery. The progress, I'm sure we're all interested in hearing that one. Did you want to add anything before I bring Councillor Atkins in?
Please, Chair. So a version of the draft work programme that I've now got, which was not available when the agenda was published because it only changed on Friday of last week, is that we've been asked to consider 3 further items. So diversity and inclusion. These are all what we would call pre-decision scrutiny. They're coming to you before they go to Cabinet. So that's diversity and inclusion, and the principal objectives and the action plan. That's around the people strategy. We've also been asked to consider the recommissioning of the voluntary sector contract. Again, pre-decision scrutiny before it goes to Cabinet in December. Now, at the moment, Chair, that looks like too full an agenda to me. So I am meeting with the leads in John Tradewell's directorate tomorrow lunchtime to say, actually, can you tell me what you think your priorities are? My personal view as a scrutiny manager is pre-decision scrutiny before it goes to Cabinet is always good. And actually, other items maybe could be delayed until the December meeting. The further development that's also happened is we've had scrutiny of the local enterprise partnership on our work programme for a long time. I met with the lead officer on Thursday of last week, and they would like to undertake that scrutiny of the LEP on the 3rd of December, when their chairman has put it in their diary already. That would need to be a meeting that we hold here, hosted by the County Council, but with invitees from Stoke-on-Trent City Council as part of their governance arrangements, Chair. So I'm sorry, you haven't got that in your paperwork.
No,
I'm happy post this meeting to circulate my draft, but if you would let me wait until I've had that conversation tomorrow lunchtime, and then maybe I'll be a bit clearer, because that 16th of November agenda, Chair, is just too big at the moment.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your consideration for us. I'm sure nobody's got any objections to that. Councillor, did you indicate to speak, Councillor Oates? No, it was Councillor. I thought he put his hand up.
It wasn't on that.
Sorry.
To object to what the scrutiny manager said, it was just to raise the issue under to be confirmed that over a year ago now, the issue of equal opportunities was raised, and then it said a draft paper was being prepared. I don't know when that date, when the draft paper was being prepared, but given it was raised over a year ago, I would have expected to see a draft paper or a paper. Has this just been put on the back burner? What is happening? Because if it was raised over a year ago, it was then discussed in October last year. We're now in October this year. So what's going on?
Councillor Atkins is totally correct. It's been on the work programme before from the previous administration. I've actually got emails, copies of emails where I've been chasing that up. The only difficulty was that this committee did not make it a priority. So when we did our work programme planning, nobody said that's one of the big things we need to do. So my last email to Sarah Getley, who's the head of HR and organisational development, I've said, we haven't taken it off the work programme, but it hasn't been raised as a priority. I am waiting to see what that diversity and inclusion report scheduled for the 16th of November contains, because I think that might answer some of the questions that were raised by the previous committee. Does that sound a fair answer, Councillor Atkins?
I think it's really sort of somewhat disingenuous to have something on the work programme which never actually makes it onto the work programme. So we either decide that we're not interested in equal opportunities and we just scrub it, or we actually take some action. You know, it really is up to this committee. I think it would be unfortunate, you know, given the struggles that people have in a number of groups that are disadvantaged, that if we were, as a committee, to say we're not interested in equal opportunities, but we do need to decide whether we are going to take action. Just leave it on the work programme and ignore it, I don't think really is an option.
I think
So member-led scrutiny. So Councillor Atkins has put forward a proposal. So it's up for you as a committee to decide if that equal opportunities needs to be raised in profile, and that I need to go away and make that a priority, Chair.
take ideas from the floor, please. Councillor Varman.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. So it is important. Charlotte, you were right. Mrs. Eccles, you're right. I think what we need to do is make sure that we have the equal opportunities and the diversity and inclusion kind of wrapped up in a kind of one report. Whereas if we don't have that, then we're going to have work going on here and work going on there.
So shall we
want to have it
take the meeting in November for the diversity and the... Yes.
So I would recommend
follow,
exactly what Nick is saying.
And make a point that if we need to follow that up, we follow it up fairly quickly as a priority.
I think, so my recommendation is wait to see what the diversity inclusion report, which is coming,
And
see what that is. If then there is further work that needs to be done on top of that,
make that a more
then make that a
priority.
recommendation at that stage.
Yeah.
Makes more sense, Chair.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me, yes. Does that, are you okay with
Chair,
that?
If the committee would approve of that.
Would the committee approve of that way forward? Yeah, I think unanimously. So, yeah, we're okay. Thank you. Thank you for ringing us up.
And then with the committee's, sorry, put to my microphone, Chair. So with the committee's approval, if you're happy that I just look at that 16th of November, I'm happy to share this draft work programme with members of the committee as soon as we've finished, but I will have the conversation about some items that may have to come off there because that's too big an agenda for one meeting.
Can I suggest we leave it in your capable hands?
If the committee are happy with that, Chair, yes. Councillor Oates indicated.
Councillor Oates.
Thank you. My attention span must be weakening. The contract with voluntary services that you raised, Nick, that was about the renewal of the agreement, wasn't it? Is that correct? And that's what's proposed. And when's that proposed to come to us pre-cabinet?
So the voluntary sector contract, which at the moment is held by an organisation called Skivvies, which I remember sitting in what was Corporate Review Select Committee when that contract was renegotiated a number of years ago. As you are the Corporate Committee, it is deemed appropriate that you have a say in that contract recommissioning. That contract has now come to an end, or will come to an end soon. So they are developing a paper for Cabinet about the recommissioning of that contract, and they want to bring it to you first.
I think, if I may, I think that's essential that comes here. I may have been involved in a call in relating to a similar subject a couple of years ago. What we've seen over the last 20 months is the value of our voluntary sector, and that has given us some massive opportunities. And what we need to do is ensure that we take advantage of those opportunities. So I think it's imperative that it comes here before it goes to Cabinet. So I appreciate your comments about a lengthy agenda, but that's a real game changer in terms of individuals' lives.
Thank you. Nick's going to, he's noted that as a priority.
Chair, are the rest of the committee in agreement with Councillor Oates' comment? I'm getting lots of nods, so I'll take that on board, Chair.
Yeah. Has anyone else got anything else they want to say? I don't want to deprive anyone of any ideas you might have. No. So I think that brings us to the end of the agenda, doesn't it? We've got nothing in the part 2. So I'm going to say the meeting finishes at 40 minutes past 11. Thank you all for your attention, attendance.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just remind members of the MTFS working group if they could hang on?
Yes, we have got a meeting that follows.
I think we're going to hold it downstairs. Councillor